In this video today, we are going to paint some skies and clouds with watercolor. So actually where I'd like to start right now is by showing you some examples of some really beautiful landscapes that you can paint using these techniques that focus on the sky rather than what's going on the ground. So pay attention to things like the colors that you're using, your light source and where it's coming from. In this, you've got this great central light source from the vanishing point. In this example here, there's almost no ground. There's very, very, very small mountain peaks. The focus is the sky. In both of these, you're doing a dusk or evening setting, so you're getting some dark clouds. Clouds don't just have to be white. But you don't really have to, with these sky paintings, worry a lot about your foreground or your middle ground. Everything that you do on the bottom half of your paper can be very simple. Beyond just dark clouds or white clouds, play around with some colors. Try some nice blue clouds on a nice yellow sky. And play around with the details that you add. I had a lot of fun with this one, doing all kinds of things. Buildings, trees, little hanging lights. As you can see, you can use nice silhouettes. Some other things that look good in silhouettes are animals. So you've seen probably like the light poles on the street or a bird sitting in a tree. Here's another example of a simple sky. The focus is really the nice colors, I think, that are in it. And then you have a simple desert ground with a little silhouette of a camel. Okay, so again, we're going to do some of this color blending in the skies today, and I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can create clouds. Excuse me, we're not creating crowds, we're creating clouds. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I have my paper here divided into 4 different squares. We're going to do 4 different paintings today, and I don't suggest you making them huge. These are just practice paintings. Again, the focus here is learning techniques. So after taping off my paper, I just split it with 2 pieces of tape to create 4 little rectangles to work in. Brushes. Let's talk about brushes. If you have a flat brushes are great because we're going to do some wet on wet technique. So you can use that flat brush to do a nice wash of water, but it's not necessary. People who are working from home, you typically with your paintbrush kits get a nice round brush in it, but not always a flat brush. So a round brush will do the same thing just as fine. You just might find it easier to work with a flat brush if you have one. We're definitely going to use round brushes for the clouds, vice versa. If you only have a flat brush, you can use that to make some nice shaped clouds, but the round end of your round brush is going to make the round shape that you want to see in your clouds. I am just going to use basic Crayola paints. I'm showing you 2 fingers right now because I like to have 2 water cups. It's good to have clean water, and having 2 water cups saves me from having to go and clean my water as much. You want to have a paper towel with you to help clean your brushes between colors. And again, I'm just using a basic Crayola palette of watercolors. You don't have to have anything fancy for this. I don't have the tray half of my water palette though, the plastic top. It's usually clear, so I'm using a tray from one of my other watercolor sets. Okay, so we are going to work first with a nice blue sky, a nice dark blue sky. So we're going to do a little bit of color mixing just to get away from your basic blue. Do something maybe a little more elegant. So I'm adding some purple and just a little bit of black to that blue from your tray. My primary color that I'm working with is blue, meaning most of the color that I'm putting on the tray is blue. So we're talking 2 parts blue maybe to 1 part purple and 1 part black. Maybe even half a part of black. Black is a very strong, overpowering color. A little bit goes a long way. So just kind of play around and test on I like to test on my paper towel. Test the color on your paper towel before you put it on your paper. But you want to have this color made before we actually start painting. You don't want to be trying to mix it and make it on your paper. Okay, so at this part in the process, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about adding your wash to your paper. We're going to do a wet on wet technique. So we're going to start by adding water. I'm going to put my flat brush to the side and work with my round brush because I figure those of you, if you're doing this at home, that's what you're working with. But I'm going to tell you that I think when I was doing this, I kind of changed my mind about what kind of sky I was going to do at the last minute. Maybe because I was staring at that desert sky right there and I really like the colors. So I am going to, after I put this water down, mix up some yellow with a little bit of orange. Yep, there. Nope. Yep, changing my mind. Here we go. So I'm going to mix up some yellow with a little bit of orange to kind of tone down that orange and use that for the bottom of my sky where the sun would be setting. Okay, so while I do that, just a couple of reminders about the wash that you put on your paper. Make sure your brush is clean and make sure that you are using clean water. If you have a dirty palette of paints, maybe you're a little messy with your paints, maybe you share your paints with a sibling who's a little messy with your paints, these palettes of watercolors are very easy to clean off with your brush and a little bit of water. Okay, so we are going to, here we go now, we're mixing up these colors and I'm doing probably about equal parts yellow to orange. If you're working off of like a Crayola tray, that yellow is going to be really bright and unnatural looking if you put it straight to your paper. So I'm adding some orange to it and it's just going to give it a more natural glow and it's going to look more like a sunset. So mix those two colors together. Okay, getting back to the wash, which I'll probably end up adding again, I think if I remember correctly. How do you know if you have the right amount of water on your paper? You should be able to see the water reflecting off of all parts of your paper in the light evenly. You shouldn't have any water pooling or puddling on your paper. That means you have too much water. And that water is going to dry quickly. So you can always add more. I would rather probably see you have not enough water and have to add more than have too much water and be working in puddles because it just turns into a big runny mess. All right, so let's go ahead and add that wash again. And now we're working in that wash. We're starting up top with our darker color. And I'm starting with water. There's water in my brush so that when I grab that color, it's not very dark at first. Because what I'm trying to do right now is just figure where one color is going to start and the next one's going to end. Okay, and now I'm grabbing actually just some nice, bright, basic blue off the tray. Again, I'm working in water with water on my brush and a little paint to start. And if I end up with too much paint, I'm just going to smooth it out with some more water. Okay, so that's kind of what I was talking about before. You can always add more water to your paper. You just want to kind of do that quickly if you find that you have too much paint, not enough water. Okay, so all these colors are going on super, super light right now, I know, but that's okay. I'm just trying to figure out where I want them. Where I want one color to start and the next color to stop. And then once I get them on and I like the way everything is spaced, I've got two more things I've got to achieve. I've got to get the colors to the darkness or transparency, lack of transparency that I want. And I've got to get the colors to blend nicely from one color to the next without completely mixing them together and making a new color. Every time you move your paintbrush back and forth between the two colors, you're going to mix those colors a little bit more. So there's a fine line between blending one color into the next color and mixing those two colors to form a new color. What you want to do with this sky is blend one color into the next color so the colors are transitioning smoothly and it doesn't look like stripes on your paper. What you don't want to do is create new colors between the three colors that you have on your paper right now because you moved your paintbrush back and forth between the two colors too many times and mixed it and turned it into a new color. When you're trying to blend these colors together, the water is your friend. Just make sure it's clean. And that water can help you smoothly transition those colors from one color to the next. And then lastly, as you can see, this isn't a quick process. It takes a few tries of switching back and forth between the colors that you're working with. Right now, those would be the yellow, the blue, and the grayish blue, before you get them just right. So just keep working it until it's the way you want it to be. And then finally, typically in a sky, especially a sky where the sun is setting, you're going to have more pigment or darker color towards the top and lighter color on the bottom. So that's what I was doing that last touch. I'm just adding more color to the top so that it's a little bit darker, and then my yellow is a little bit lighter on the bottom. Okay, we're going to move on now to the next practice painting, sky painting. So I clean my brush to create a nice wash again. Most of these skies, we're going to be using a wet on wet technique. So go ahead and put a nice smooth, start with a nice smooth wash on your paper. And now I'm going to show you 3 different ways to paint clouds. So I'm just going to use the blue for my tray for this, just to keep it simple, so that I can focus on the technique. This first way that I'm going to show you to paint clouds, we're not actually painting clouds, we're painting the sky around the clouds. And we're letting our white paper make the clouds. So because we're using a wet on wet technique, we wet our paper first. We put a good amount of water in our brush and then paint. The paint is going to kind of move into that water that's already on your paper beyond where you set it down, to create a cloud-like effect. Again, I would recommend less paint first. Kind of figure out where you want to place your clouds in the sky. And then you'll go back with another round of paint. All right, I'm going to speed things up here a little bit because, again, these clouds, these things that we're doing, they take a little bit of time. So don't feel like this is something you should be able to paint in 5 minutes. Take your time and just keep working it until you get it right. So earlier when I first talked about making these clouds, I said that I'm putting the paint down. And I want you to think of it like that. Rather than thinking about painting and swiping your brush back and forth, think about you're taking your brush, you're picking the paint up out of the tray, and you're putting it down on the paper in kind of this like tapping motion. You can see my hand is kind of tapping the paper as I'm placing the paint down, and it's going to move around on its own because I have that water on the paper already. Now, if you find that it's not moving around on its own, you're going to want to just add more water to the spot that you're working, or more water to your brush. Just having enough water in your brush can sometimes do the trick. All right, once I have my clouds in place, you can leave it just like that, or if you want to kind of create more depth in your clouds, you can take your black with lots of water and just a little bit of black, and that's actually going to create a gray look, a gray effect, and you can kind of create more fluff. I did air quotes on that, fluff in your clouds, by adding some shadows with gray into your clouds. You're not, again, painting the clouds gray. You're taking water and you're taking paint, and you're taking mostly water, and you're placing that paint down in your clouds with a little bit of a tapping motion. And you're just doing it in small spots. You're not covering the entire cloud. Our goal isn't to have gray clouds at the end. It's to have white fluffy clouds with little gray shadows to kind of create more fluff in your cloud. So it's not just one big white spot. The other thing I want to point out, just like my other sky, my sunlight is coming from the bottom of the sky, so I left the bottom lighter and I made the top darker. And the same goes for my placement of my shadows. If you see that sometimes it looks like my hand's flipped upside down, it's because I'm trying to put the shadows more towards the top of the clouds, because that's where the light would be reflecting from, would be the bottom of the cloud. So it's going to be a little brighter down there. Okay, moving on to the next one. Whoo, we are rocking and rolling now. All right, so this is another really easy way to make clouds, but it takes, again, a lot of patience, especially so that you don't rip your paper. This is a subtractive method. So now I'm just painting my whole sky blue. This really only works, I only recommend this, I would say. You can make this work with lots of different dark and light colors, but I would only really recommend this, especially if you're just starting out with watercolors, doing this method with a nice light wash on your paper. So we put the water down, we put the light color down, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do the same motion with my hands, but I'm doing the reverse. I'm taking just water in my brush, and I am picking color up. So my entire sky was painted blue, and now I'm it's almost like I'm trying to mop the color up while creating the shape of a cloud. So as I go, I pick that color up, and you can see kind of off screen. I think I moved my hand so you could see better. What I'm doing is I'm wiping that color off onto my paper towel. So when you do this, you want to have a paper towel in your hands, because otherwise that color eventually that you just picked up is going to go back down if you get too much color in your brush. And I do have this on double time. My hand does not move that fast. But really my point is that this takes a little bit of time, and you don't want to rush it or be too aggressive with it, because you'll end up ripping your paper. But if you just take your time and you just lightly pick color up, put it on the paper towel, pick color up, put it on the paper towel, get a little bit more water, pick more color up, put it on the paper towel, you can really get your paper back to white. And one more sky, one more wash. Again, all of these are working a wet on wet technique. And this time let's have some fun with some color, with a nice evening sky with some dark clouds in an evening sky. Kind of like the clouds that were in, there was one with a lot of color in the sky, and then the one where I did all of the trees and the building and the lights, all of the silhouettes of those things in black afterwards. So I'm just kind of spontaneously grabbing some colors here. I almost went with black on the top, and then I realized that's not going to work with my black clouds, so I quickly added some purple to that. I'm blending it into some blue and then some orange. Now I realize that this activity has been going on for a while now, so first of all, don't be afraid to do it in parts. You don't have to do this all in one sitting. And second of all, I'm kind of rushing this last wash where I'm blending 3 colors in the sky, but I'm also not that worried about it, because I'm going to just overload this last painting with some nice dark clouds, and I can kind of use that to cover where the transition is from one color to the next, so I don't have to have it as smooth as the sky that I did, the first sky that I did, the one that's over in that desert picture over there with the camel, because there's going to be clouds. The main focus isn't just the sky. Okay, now we're adding clouds. Now my paper's probably dried a little bit, so I'm using water with my black paint that I'm pulling from the tray. And there's a lot of repetitive principles in what we're doing with watercolor. Again, I would recommend going lighter with the color first. You can always add more color and make your clouds darker. And I'm using that same hand motion that I was using in the sky above, where I was working on the sky, only this time I'm using it for the clouds. So I'm just kind of placing that paint down, letting it move a little bit in the water to create these nice clouds. I want to kind of layer some of my clouds over each other. I'm holding my paintbrush on its side, if you can see that. And so when you do that, that's always going to give you more paint at the top of what it is that you're painting and less paint on the bottom, which is going to kind of create the shape of your clouds, but also give them a nice translucent effect. That's also why we kind of want to layer more cloud on top of clouds to give them a little bit more dimension. All right, and remember, this is a practice painting, so just go heavy on those clouds, have fun. Find a style of cloud that you really like, that works for you. And then think about maybe what you could do with these, what kind of beautiful paintings, landscape paintings you could apply these guys to. So I'm just gonna finish up my clouds here, but I can't wait to see what you guys do with this. So again, have some fun practicing, but then also have fun seeing what you can apply these guys to, what kind of creative paintings you can do it with. Because you guys are so creative. So whatever you apply these to, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. And again, I can't wait to see it. Okay, I'm rambling, so I will see you next time.